If you've come across my channel before, then the chances are you're probably going to know what a low starch diet is. But for a lot of people, when I mention that I don't eat starch, they have no idea what I mean, what that entails. So I thought I'd just give a short explanation of what a low starch diet actually is. A low starch diet is basically an anti-inflammatory diet. A diet that might be useful for anybody with an autoimmune disease. However, all autoimmune diseases are different, so obviously everybody's food requirements are different. As well as being anti-inflammatory, this diet is also low carb and gluten-free and grain-free, and I stick to dairy-free a lot of the time as well, although I went out for lunch the other day and pretty much one of the only things on the menu that I could have was a goat's cheese salad. So I picked that because I hadn't actually tried goat's cheese in my diet yet, and that was 3 days ago now, and I haven't seemed to have any issues with it. So goat's cheese does seem to be fine for me, although actual cow's milk dairy isn't fine for me. So it's all just a little bit of trial and error once you've been on the diet for a while and you're kind of figuring out what foods you can and can't tolerate. So I started the low starch diet just to see whether it had any benefits of helping to kind of manage the pain that I was getting from my spondyloarthritis. And it's ankylosing spondylitis, which is an arthritis that kind of affects your spine and other joints and areas of the body. Since starting the diet, I have noticed a lot of improvements in a lot of issues that I used to have. So it's basically my lifestyle now, so I wanted to create a channel just to document my journey and just share what I learned with other people. It is a bit of a minefield, there's a lot to learn. So I've created a website, lowstarchlife.com, just to share the resources and the recipes and everything that I like, that I find useful. So go and check out my website if you want to know a bit more about me and my journey, and just to find references for everything that I've found at the moment. As I say, I'm always learning, so I'm always going to be adding to it. So the only way to really find out what you can tolerate is to do your own research and go through your own elimination process. So that's the best place to start. On an AIP elimination process, I've mentioned it in another of my videos, so I'll give a link to that. So have a look back. If you haven't started yet, then I've created a video how I started a low starch diet, and that gives some advice on just where I started personally. So when you start an anti-inflammatory diet, there are other things that you probably will want to cut out before deciding what you can and can't include. So for example, nightshades, which tomatoes and chilies and paprika and everything like that comes under the nightshade balloon, but actually I've added those back in and they don't cause me an issue, so I do eat those. Like I have a spaghetti bolognese recipe that I have all the time. Another thing that I do eat that a lot of people can't are bananas, but I don't seem to have a problem with them, so I put them into my smoothies in the morning. If I have one in my smoothie, then I wouldn't have another one during the day, but I do find one is okay for me. So although a low starch diet is gluten-free, it's much more than gluten-free. So for example, there are gluten-free flours around, and a lot of shops now sell gluten-free breads and gluten-free alternatives. However, a lot of those products will still include starchy foods. So I generally stick to coconut flour and almond flour at the moment, which obviously isn't ideal for everybody, again, because I know some people can't tolerate coconut and some people can't tolerate much almond. So although this diet is very restrictive, you kind of get used to what you can and can't eat. So I found quite a lot of food swaps along my journey. So basically, instead of pasta, I'll usually have courgette or zucchini if you're in America. instead of rice, I'll usually have cauliflower. Now I don't always make cauliflower rice, and my favourite way to eat cauliflower is just to put it in the oven and bake it, and then put whatever sauce you've got on the top. Instead of soy sauce, I have coconut aminos, which isn't exactly the same as soy sauce, but it's a pretty good alternative. With regards to milk, I only have coconut milk. The reason for this is because a lot of the nut milks have a lot of thickeners in and rice. So I haven't actually tried them, but my favourite milk anyway is coconut milk. It did take me a little while to get used to it, but now I don't tell the difference really. But I do make sure that the coconut milk I buy doesn't have rice or thickeners or anything like that in. As you probably know, if you've watched my other videos, you'll know that Lucy B coconut milk is my favourite. It's 99% coconut, and it's been out of stock for ages in the UK because of the pandemic, and it is back in stock now, so I'm very excited about that. And the other thing that I have cut out a lot drastically from my diet is sugar, refined sugar. So instead of white sugar or any sort of refined sugar, I use maple syrup and honey, and I love maple syrup, and it is fine for me. I haven't found any issues with it. So all of the recipes that I make, they are mostly dairy free, they're fine for gluten free, they're grain free and wheat free, so anybody can still eat these meals. But the added addition of these recipes is that they are low starch. Now, I don't really think of my diet as a diet. It's not really a diet, it is just the way I eat now. And although a lot of people think it's really restrictive, when you start the elimination process and you see how few foods you can eat and then you start adding them back in, by the end, as long as you can add quite a few, your diet actually seems like you've got quite a lot of option. So that's why I've shared a lot of my recipes, because at the beginning I thought, oh gosh, you know, it's going to be really restrictive, there's nothing to eat, it's going to be very boring. But actually there are so many foods that you can eat that aren't boring at all. The other day my husband and the kids actually had fish and chips for the first time in ages, and oh, it smelled so good, but obviously I couldn't have it. However, I, you know, always make something and I think it tastes probably better than what they had, and actually my husband did say it wasn't very nice anyway, because he's also used to eating how I eat now. Whether you're gluten free, dairy free, grain free, or just looking to eat more whole foods and make some different recipes that aren't necessarily full of sugar, then these recipes will be great for you. You don't necessarily have to follow a low starch diet, it's just the way that I eat, so that's the recipes that I create. Now, the more I've researched, the more diets that I have found that look similar, and I've been trying to work out the differences between them all. So in my next video, I'm going to have a look at them and compare them and just see how different they all are. So I hope that helps explain why I've chosen a low starch life, and that low starch life doesn't have to be boring, and how it is restrictive, but also there are so many things you can make. It's just working out which ingredients you can use and then adapting recipes to suit your lifestyle. Thank you for joining me and watching me, and as always, if you subscribe to my channel, I'll be really, really grateful.